Good evening. Welcome to the Finance and Operations Committee meeting, Monday, December 13th, 2021. It is 6:47 p.m. We are calling this meeting to order. We have Dottie Oden. Here. And Jessica Brown. I am here. We have a quorum. Also in attendance, we have Dan Donovan from Central Office. Thank you, Dan. I will go ahead and let you begin the meeting.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the annual deferred maintenance and capital improvement plan. Mr. Smith was going to be here. I don't know if something happened or he mixed up the nights since we changed the nights. Probably one or the other. But I'll run through this. Basically, each December, we put together this plan. We then fill out various forms. We send it to the city, and in January we have a meeting. Usually Mr. Smith and myself meet with the Capital Improvement Committee at the city on typically a Monday night, let's say. We'll go through our various items that we'd like to have in the planning process, and then basically what the Capital Improvement Committee will do is then review all the department items and then make suggestions to the mayor and the city of the items that they would like to spend on. So I will start off. The first part is the deferred maintenance. So these will be the items that we're looking at doing. The first item is the cooling tower rehab. That's estimated at about $160,000. A number of the components of the cooling tower are reaching the end of their service life and thus need replacing. The next item is the storefronts at Bicentennial, and what that means is, you know, where the doors and the windows are, and over time they rust out. They not only let critters maybe sneak in or two, but they also start to have some leaking and affecting the floors, etc. So these storefronts are rotting and experience leaking, so there's a plan to do 5 of them over a year for a 3-year period. This is the 100,000 would be the first 5.
We've done some of those in the past, I remember.
Yes, we have. We've done them because a lot of the schools have them.
Okay.
So is it 100,000 to complete 5 projects, or is it 100,000 each?
100,000 to do 5 of the storefronts. Yes. The next one is to repave the fire lane and playground at Dr. Crisp. That's an estimate of about $75,000. The fire lane behind the school is in pretty poor condition, as is the playground. We have done upgrades to the playground area the last couple of years, so this will sort of finish that project. Bicentennial Elementary School traffic improvement. Now, this item, Sean has it listed here. There's a possibility that we may be able to use some ESSER funds on this, so we'll be looking into that over the next couple of months. But the entrance onto the site, if you've ever been there when school is starting or school is ending, it's near it's a very busy intersection. It's a rather unsafe intersection. A lot of parents drive at that school. So it's kind of a problem at this point. We had done a study a few years ago recommending changes. We just never had the funding to do it. So that's on the list of hope to be able to do. Painting at Mount Pleasant. Custodial crew, especially during the COVID times, did a lot of painting on the levels that you can touch and reach with a short ladder. Mount Pleasant being the sort of up and down kind of building as opposed to one level like a lot of our other ones, is going to need some of the higher areas that you really can't get to. It's probably not the type of work the custodial crew would do, so we're looking to bring in some professional painters that will do the work in the stairwells and the gymnasium. Security improvements of about $60,000. This project will install motion detectors in the 2 high schools. The two high schools are the only schools in the district without them. So they were the sort of first to get cameras, but they're the last to get the latest technology. This is another thing Sean's had for a few years, is to develop a school facilities master plan, which would get another opinion on the assessment of our schools and sort of work with us to put together a plan for the future. Anytime you do this, it's tough to fund everything you need to do, but this will at least sort of, I think, complement what we're doing now. So
That's essentially to bring in someone to take a look at what we currently have and to give a recommendation on prioritizing projects.
exactly. And Sean has a note here about, you know, the amount of deferred maintenance. Basically, the way deferred maintenance is budgeted is we put together our operating budget at the school level, gets approved by the school board, and then the city does a deferred maintenance budget, and they'll give certain departments so much money. It's been a relatively small amount of money since I've been here. It's been either $100,000, $200,000, or $300,000. So it's really not anywhere near enough to do all the projects we want. Historically, Sean used to budget about $600,000 a year, and we never even would get that amount. Now, that being said, we have had a lot of projects done when we've renovated a school. We've done some of those things that were on this list. We've also had some bonding done for a few other projects. We sort of pulled together some of the deferred maintenance projects and bonded them. We've also had some one-time money that we called it the last couple of years, and we used that to do some of these projects. So the deferred maintenance has been only $100,000 the last 2 years, but we have had some other funding sources. And with the bigger projects, we've knocked a lot more off the list than one might think. But it's, when you have 18 buildings, I mean, if you're a homeowner, you know. I'm sort of, you know, I purchased the home I'm in now in '99, and just put in the heater, my septic just went, I just did that, you know, so all those things you need or you want to do. Okay, capital improvements. So those are the deferred maintenance things. Capital improvements, basically, here he is. I was going through your plan. Yeah.
At 6:55, we are adding, Mr. Sean Smith is going to join us. And actually, if I'll just comment on the last thing, are you going to let Sean?
Yeah, I'm going to let Sean.
So I was going to say, so the thing you last mentioned about the fact that we've received only about $100,000 through our annual budget process the last 2 years. I will say, I think that the operations department, you guys are very judicious about city spending, and I've always been really impressed. I mean, you've had probably the smallest increase of any department over the last several years, so I really appreciate how careful you guys are with our money. And we did start the meeting early, Sean, so.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay. So you can, I sort of went through the deferred maintenance list, so you can jump in on the capital improvement piece.
Okay.
Yep, catch your breath.
It did say 7 p.m.
It does say 7, yes, but we were piggybacking another meeting, so that's fine.
Okay.
Welcome. Take your time.
So I went to the deferred maintenance list, yeah. Yeah, the one thing I want to say on the deferred maintenance, and maybe you covered it, but Manchester's allocated $3 million a year for the last 3 years. We've got 100,000, so it doesn't quite add up. With a $10 million backlog, that would, is that 100 years to do all that work? Of course, we're adding to it all the time, so it just doesn't work. Results in capital projects that cost you $10 million, if you keep up that sort of funding. But you already know that. As far as capital projects go, the good news is we have nothing planned for this coming year. But we're smack in the middle of the middle school project, so we're spending plenty of money in that regard. And that's FY23, that project's going to continue through for the next couple of years. New middle school won't be done until August of 2024. At that point, I propose we start the planning process in FY 2024 for Main Dunstable and Birch Hill. Hoping, I think we'll talk about ESSER funds later, so we'll get into that. The Main Dunstable, Birch Hill projects, they're sister schools, so it makes sense to marry those two together when it comes to doing the construction work. They're virtually identical, so hire an architect to do one, it makes sense to do both of them. And hopefully ESSER funds would cut into some of that cost. After those, New Searles, Mount Pleasant, Bicentennial, Dr. Crisp, and Amherst Street, Amherst Street was the school that was under construction when I first got here, so we've been through a 30-year process at that point. Closer to that, we have, in 2024, we'll be due to replace the turf at Stella Stadium. The turf life is about 8 years or so, and we've achieved that. And it's, as far as I know, it's still playable and in decent condition. Park and Rec does tests on it every year, and it's still decent, but we're just looking forward a couple of years from now to when we will have to replace it. The other thing we want to think about is additional security measures. Right now, we've talked to Mr. Donovan about it, and we've lumped it all together. It's a $6 million project if we did everything. We could do it that way. We could break it up into smaller projects. But for example, some of the things are additional security cameras in places that we don't have them. We have several schools that don't have security vestibules. The one that comes immediately to mind is New Searles. And you can walk into that school. Once you get in the door, you can go any which way and not go through any sort of security check. And there's several other schools like that. Now, depending on when that's actually funded and when we actually do that, you may be into the renovation of the school itself. So it depends on what happens first.
I can ask a question on that. Is it generally cheaper to do a project like that, do it all at once, or to break it up? I mean, would it be save a significant amount of money to do the $6 million worth of work all at once as opposed to?
Well, that's what Mr. Donovan and I discussed briefly. You know, what's the best way to do that at this point? And we spent an awful lot of money on an awful lot of other projects. Right now, we just put that as a placeholder. Just off the top of my head, so security vestibules is a pretty important thing, I think. So New Searles is one, Mount Pleasant is another. And those are pretty expensive propositions. We looked at doing Mount Pleasant was actually going to the main entrance, having a ramp down into the ground almost. This was a couple of years ago, maybe Ms. Odom remembers. And having the main office on the ground floor. And then swapping a classroom down there, or maybe it's a teacher's room down there, I believe, that first space. And then putting the office down there, so there'd be a security vestibule, so to speak, there, instead of having to go up into the door, up the stairs, and to the left to get to the office. So that doesn't come cheap. I wouldn't want to I have some numbers for that. We actually had Harvey Construction give us some numbers as part of a bigger project, though. So it's 250,000, $500,000, somewhere in there, maybe. So that's Mount Pleasant, New Searles. I don't know how we do that one, because you've got an elevator right smack in the middle of the lobby as you come in. So the way to do that is, I don't know how much of the stuff we should be discussing on camera.
Yeah.
It's all right.
You know?
So, yeah, I was just curious if seems like maybe financially it might be great to be able to do it all at once, but with all the other projects right now, it's not really feasible. And probably even with escalated construction costs, it wouldn't make sense, but also the projects are very different. So it's not like we can buy all these materials and match them up to the schools. It's kind of, they all have unique scenarios that they need. Okay, that was really more my question. Thank you.
If the Board of Ed was interested, we could take a look at just security vestibules and give you a number for that, of the schools that are remaining that don't have them. Other than that, we actually did a study a couple of years ago through Public Works for the pavement around this school, North High School. If you've driven around it, especially in the daytime, you can see there's a lot of alligatering, there's dips and cracks, and a lot of the concrete curbing has been ripped out one way or the other. So they actually came up with a 5-year plan. I've just stuck that whole 5-year plan into one number. And that's in FY25. Again, that can be broken out into smaller chunks as well. So I guess that's the capital plan.
And it's also pretty interesting that you have 2030 mentioned in this document. It's kind of crazy to be thinking about, but it's great how far ahead you're looking.
Well, Mr. Donovan and I probably won't be here at that point, but good to have it in the queue.
We're not going to let you go. Do you have any questions, Dottie? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
Okay, so as I said, as we will then, when the forms get here, I don't know if you saw my email, Sean, they're not here yet, but when the forms come in, then Sean will fill out various forms, and then we'll have a meeting with that committee in January down at City Hall. Okay.
So do we need a motion to approve?
Yes, typically you do. You approve the deferred maintenance and capital
Okay.
plan.
I move to approve the annual deferred maintenance and capital improvement plans.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, so the next item is about the construction costs in the ESSER/CARES funding. We'll just call it the ESSER funding. If you recall, last month I went through, there's 3 different funding sources, and they all have slightly different names, but in general, we'll just call them all the ESSER funds. That totaled is about 47 million is the amount we've been granted. We've allocated thus far 18 million of that. Now that means we've put it into the grant and it's been approved. Of that 18 million, we talked about what we have allocated and the amount spent to date last month, but we want to concentrate more on what we're going to be using, what we've already put in. Of the 18 million, how much of it's related to construction. So I'll let Mr. Smith talk about numbers 1 and 2, the specific projects that are in the grant.
Okay, I didn't bring my copy of that, but I think I can speak from memory. So the larger one of the 2 is Franklin Street, and so that was at 5.2 million. And so that is using ESSER funds. That's through a company called EEI, Energy Efficient Investments. So they are primarily using that money to replace all of the mechanical HVAC systems in the school. They are changing out the main electrical distribution systems, changing out the windows to more energy efficient windows, replacing the membrane on the roof, and just generally looking for energy saving things to do. Actually, they're working with Harriman Architects for a lot of the design work. They have their own in-house engineers as well. And I guess that's really it as far as that piece of work. They've already started or plan to do some work over the Christmas vacation break. We're looking for a space on the second and third floor on the eastern side of each of those two wings to put air handling equipment in them. And they're also installing a third boiler in the boiler room. That'll be taking place over the next month and a half. But the vast majority of that work will be taking place this summer. But there's some work they can do in the meantime. We had to get that moving when we did because, as you well know, a lot of these things have a lot of long lead time, and we had to order it at this point to get it in time for next summer. The second project was a little over $500,000, and that's to install new HVAC equipment at Charlotte Ledge and Fairgrounds. Dottie probably remembers in the early 2012-13, we renovated Charlotte Ledge and Fairground elementary schools and replaced the HVAC systems. We put in displacement air systems. In each of those schools, it was primarily the front wing and down the center hallway. We didn't have quite enough funds to do the back wing or the middle wing going from left to right, which includes the art, chorus, SPED classrooms, and a media center. So this project will take care of the back wing and SPED media center and art and chorus classrooms. We hired in fact, the Board of Ed already approved the architect to do all that design work, and that work will take place this summer as well.
And I think the thing with that was we had put this funding, the $512,000, into the CARES 1, because that's pretty much what was left in that grant. The cost of this project, because of a number of different factors, is probably going to be more than that. So Sean, would you guess about 512 would cover 2 of them? And would probably need to put the other one into the CARES 2 or 3, right? ESSER 2 or 3.
The way the pricing's going,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay. And so those are two of the items that we'll be looking at over the next few months. Keep in mind, these grant funds, the CARES 1 funds, we have to spend by September of 2022. So all that money's already allocated. This construction project will have more information coming soon. But the other two, CARES ESSER 2 is September of 23, and 3 is September of 24. But as you realize, doing a construction project takes lots of timing and coordination. And the other thing is also to use these federal funds for construction projects, they've put in a process at the state. So you have to get, the first process is you get conceptual approval, okay, conceptual design approval. We've done that for the Franklin Street. We haven't quite done that yet for the back wings of the 3 schools, but that will be soon. And then, so that simply says, okay, you can continue on. Then you got to get the architects involved, and there's a whole list of items you need to do. There was probably, Sean and I and the EEI people had a meeting last week. There's probably about 10 items that need to be done. So we're clicking away on those. You get those to the state, and then they give you the final approval so you can actually start spending the money in the grant. So that is just another layer of approvals and things that need to get done. And then when you do the project, you have to follow federal regulations. Now, if we were up in, north of Concord, you'd have to pay your plumbers a lot more than they used to getting paid, which for them would probably be fine. Down here, we probably don't have as much of an issue in that this Davis-Bacon law, you got to pay a certain amount. A lot of the trades that we pay down here, we pay those amounts anyway. There could be a couple of trades that end up, we might have to tick up on the pay. Attached in the package was sort of the ESSER funded construction process, which I've sort of semi-verbalized, but like I said, there's probably about 7 or 8 or 9 different forms and pieces of information that need to be covered before you can actually start spending the money. So once again, sort of big government steps in and gives you lots of money and then gives you lots of rules. So it makes it a little tricky. Still happy to have the money, don't get me wrong, but sometimes they make it hard to spend. So any questions on that?
I don't so much have a question, I have a comment. I remember going to visit Fairgrounds Elementary when they were having summer school. The Boys Club had a program there. And I went down to the back wing, and I went to the office and I said, I don't think your air conditioning is working at the wing. They said, we don't have, is it a dehumidification system there? And I said, you don't have it? And they said, no, that we didn't have the money to finish it. So I would ask, when you're looking at the 2 schools, if there's 2 schools you can do right away and you have to wait on the 3rd one, I would ask you to look at which schools have summer school in them. I don't know if all the schools will have them, but that would be a real help because it was oppressive. It was a warm summer, but the difference was just amazing. So all I would ask is that you look at the 3 schools, and if there's one that's not going to have summer school, I would ask you to wait on that one because the summer school students will be in there in the summer, and that's when you really need it. Thanks.
If I could, Ledge and Fairgrounds always have summer school every year. So those are, what you just said, those are the main 2.
Thank you. Are you, that's a really good point, Dottie. Thank you so much. Are you still having a hard time even struggling to get contractors that are even available to do the work since everybody's doing work right now?
Well, we haven't bid it out yet. We're still waiting for the final designs to come in, which will hopefully be in the next month. We just hired through EEI a contractor to install the boiler at Franklin Street on very short notice. So hopefully, as long as we get things out of there, get the bidding documents out in January, I think we'll be okay.
Okay. Thank you so much for putting all that work into all the paperwork. I don't.
No, that was more informational, but just sort of to let everyone know that there'll be more of these coming as we move ahead, especially assuming that we start, we want to be smart about the way we use some of this money, and, you know, Sean mentioned the Main Dunstable and Birch Hill work that needs to be done. Now, ESSER funds can't be used to do all your renovations, but they can be used to improve the HVAC, windows, things like that. So being smart and trying to parse out some of that work to use these funds, but it does put a little bit of a timeline, you know, that typically we wouldn't do. We'd finish the middle school, we'd get another bond, and we'd move on to our next project. This time, we're going to have multiple things going on at once. No.
All right. So I guess if you don't need a motion, we can move on to the next item.
Okay. Next item is basically Dr. McKinney asked me to bring this forward to the board. This is also sort of an informational item. Basically, with the, this is the the ESSER 3, or the ARPA is another name for it. And so when we've done these grants, when you first work on the grants, there's a number of questions that need to be asked and answered, and then there is this requirements document that needs to be filled out. So we've already gone through the process. We had to do this for the CARES 2 also, but Dr. McKinney felt we should at least sort of share the document, so it was attached in your package. Basically, the topics it covers is transparency and accessibility, stakeholder engagement, supporting safe operation of in-person learning, addressing the impact of lost instructional time, and learner and community needs. So those are the 5 areas, and there's a number of questions. Basically, you're checking off a box. They're asking you, did you do it? Do you plan on doing it? Did you do it? Yes. Did you do it? No. Did you do it? Somewhat. So this has been, like I said, it's been filled out. The management team put it together. Dr. McKinney then submitted it, and the state approved it. So we just want to make sure the board's aware of this in case anything comes up. But it's basically part of the grant management process for these funds. Any questions on that?
No, thank you very much. That's
Okay. You can,
Okay. So when I arrived, I handed out, give you a handout. This is for the purchase of a replacement loader backhoe. You're familiar with the city's capital equipment replacement fund, or reserve fund. It's what the city uses to replace all its vehicles. The police department uses, the fire department, Public Works, and us. For the current fiscal year, we just had one vehicle in for replacement, and that was for our backhoe. We currently have a 2005 New Holland loader backhoe. Over the past couple of years, we spent an awful lot of money keeping it running. There's a promise of having to spend much more if we have to keep it going for another year. And considering a replacement for that, we looked at the capability. There are certain things we need out of it, maintaining it, and then the cost. The Public Works Department maintains a lot of our large vehicles for us, and so we felt pretty strongly we should have the same sort of equipment as they do. Just it helps that they're familiar with the equipment and they maintain, they stock the parts to replace things. So they use a Caterpillar. They've standardized on that for their earth and debris moving equipment. And so we searched around and found a backhoe loader that suits our needs. And we found one that is actually below the amount that the city set aside for replacement. There's a nationwide procurement instrument, Sourcewell, that the city uses, or at least Public Works uses, that I'm aware of, that actually the Sourcewell originated in Minnesota, but it's used nationwide. They bid out large equipment, and one of the things that they bid out is backhoes, and specifically they work for Caterpillar. Case is another big equipment manufacturer. And so they've already bid everything out. They've already sent an RFP out, and so we already have the price. So it saves a lot of time on our part, and we have a good price. Work with a local vendor. They're actually the Caterpillar is out of Londonderry, so it helps. If there's something that Public Works can handle, they're right next door if we have to maintain something. This is all the specifications we're looking for are attached. I actually attached a couple of Sourcewell documents here, a little bit that tells you about it, and the cover page of the RFP that Sourcewell sent out for Caterpillar equipment. So all that said, we were getting, for a trade-in, We're getting $16,000 for our New Holland backhoe. And the cost for the brand-new Caterpillar is $139,900. So the net cost to us is $123,900. The surf account had $150,000 in it. And that was just a cost that I came up 8 years ago, figuring that would be our cost now, based upon us going out and actually having to purchase it on our own. So I recommend the Board of Ed approve the purchase of a 2022 Caterpillar 420XE in the amount of $123,900, which includes the trade-in value of our 2005 New Holland backhoe. Funds the purchase are from the city's capital equipment reserve fund.
Thank you.
I'll make it. I recommend the Board of Ed approve the purchase of a 2022 Caterpillar 420XE loader backhoe in the amount of $123,900, which includes the trade-in value of our 2005 New Holland backhoe. Funds to purchase this are from the city's capital equipment reserve fund.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Enjoy your new backhoe.
Thank you. And similar to the capital improvement fund, with their forms we fill out, and then we go through the alderman for final approval for this.
Thank you very much.
All set with me?
Are we down to the transfer report or the financial report?
No, we're not there yet, but we're at the credit card report.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr.
Good night, Sean. I dropped on your desk tonight this one-page credit card report. The one that was put in the package was only a piece of it. As I've mentioned many times, this is a requirement per the policies, and it's just basically showing the spending on the credit card. As you can see, relatively small amount of spending has taken place, though in the month of July, we did spend $7,749.82 on the credit card. That was for the purchase of QuickBooks software. We have been using a QuickBooks version that goes back about 20 years, hadn't been supported in a few years. When we did the Student Activity Fund audit last year, it kind of fell apart in our hands, so to speak. So we've put in the new system. I mean, we've taken the new software. We ended up doing it a couple of different ways. We ended up just using the cloud-based software. So that's what the $7,000 was, because they required that if we paid with the credit card, it would be cheaper than if we sent them a check. So that's why we decided to use that. And like I said, that's used by all the schools, all the secretaries managing their student activity accounts. It's also used internally in the finance department at district office for a few small things, but the main reason for it is the student activity funds.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions, Ms. Oden? Me neither. All right, so I move to approve the fiscal year 2021 credit card report.
Yeah, quarterly credit card.
Quarterly credit card report.
Second?
And all in favor? Aye.
Okay, financial report. So we'll use the monthly one that I've been reviewing each month. Run through the sort of highlighted areas. Wages full-time, you take a look September, October, November, the numbers are pretty steady. There is a slight rise in November because I think we've actually increased some of our staffing that we've been low on. We still are low on specific positions, but we're making a little bit of progress. Down on the wages, temporary seasonal, that's typically the summer help or part-time people working for Sean until they become hired. This month, though, it's actually for Kyle Langell, who filled in as an assistant sped director while Chelsea Gillis was on maternity leave. So that's what that $6,750 is. But the other thing that points to is it shows that finding staff, we've never typically had a problem finding custodians, but if we can offer full-time jobs with benefits, we can still find them. But finding the temporary ones has been difficult. So even though we're down a few slots, working with people being out for one reason or another, we haven't been able to find people to fill in the short term. Okay, wages per diem. I did a little, that's the subs. So I did a little, went back a few years. In 2018 through November, we had spent $314,000. In 2019, $347,000. In 2020, $395,000. So those were sort of regular school years through that point in time. Last year, it was only $195,000, but that's because we were remote. So then this year, you look at it, we're back in school, it's only $250. So it's $100 to $150 less. And that's not for lack of trying, but we're having less substitutes. Therefore, I mean, the one good thing about having less substitutes is you spend less money, but the reality is we want the substitutes. So just kind of track that. You will be getting, probably in the January committee, we got a couple of ideas to try to help with the sub process, and we'll be sharing those with you. But just based on those numbers, you know, you can talk to any principal. Schools are struggling to find help, especially with teachers and paras being out for various reasons. Additional hours, mostly what that is the music, the people that teach music on the side, and interpreters and things like that. The people that sort of do per diem kind of costs, labor costs. The stipends are the head teachers and the middle school coaches, and next month you'll see the high school coaches, so that number will be a lot higher. Okay, retirement and separation pay. I updated my list. I took a look at who, basically teachers, if they're going to retire, need to have a letter in by February 1st. So we sort of used that as, okay, here's an expectation. So I've gone and reviewed that list of the people that were that gave the letters, and have they been paid yet, and everybody but one person. So there's about, that person was expected to get about $30,000. So that's the only amount that has yet to be charged to this account. There were a couple teachers that were granted their severance after February 1st for specific reasons, but all in all. So we're pretty close. What we'll see once, I'll find out what happened with that teacher, if they just haven't applied for the severance yet. There's a process you have to go through, or maybe something's changed, I don't know. But for the rest of the year, what you'll see is just when people leave, we have to pay their accrued vacation time, so you'll see those costs. There's not too many people that are probably going to leave in the middle of the year that would get a severance. That's more than just their vacation time.
But this isn't a typical year.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Last couple certainly haven't been. Okay, so those are the labor counts. All in all, it's okay. You see in the last month, you'll notice right at the bottom there, where it says contract retro escrow transfer. That's the para contract. That's that money's being put back in so that we could pay those retro amounts. All right, fringe benefits, nothing much to say there. Legal services a little lower this month. Was just Mr. Clausen's bill and a couple of small ones. Instruction services, sort of the same. We've been running the same as those 2 months as we did last year. Pupil support, that's the OTPT. That looks about the same. And contracted services, which is mostly costs by the plant operations department and the IT department. Those are all expected costs that are in there. The next page, page 2, property services. So when we met, when we were talking about that construction project with the company EEI, they've done a lot of work on the high schools to save us energy. So I said, okay, I'm going to start to see these savings. Now, the interesting thing is we will see savings, but the one thing that he mentioned, and we don't have the analysis yet, so I'm not getting into actual dollar amounts, but despite us doing and getting some savings, by doing 2 things, by running the HVAC more frequently, which is what is to mitigate COVID, you're running the fans more frequently, so there's an increased cost to electricity to do that. And we're using a thicker MERV filter. So instead of, we used to use an 8, now we're using a 13 or a 14. So therefore, it's got to work harder and go on. So the electricity, even though we're going to save in some areas, that's going to be an increase in cost. So when we get more into the details on that, it'll be interesting. We'll be getting that information probably in the next 60 days.
Dan, is that something that we can work into the ESSER funding for the escalated cost?
It's a good question. I'm not 100% sure if we can. If you could get a utility cost in there or not. Yeah, I don't know. Good idea. Possible, we could look into it. But I did just take a look at the first 5 months of the last couple years. You know, year to date, we've spent $800,000 in electricity. Back in 20, it was $810,000, and last year it was only $550, but that's because we weren't in the buildings. So all in all, it'll be interesting to get that data to see what's the increased cost of running the fans with the filters and the more frequency versus the savings with the equipment we put in. Heating, gas, and water are pretty much online with what we, at this point in time, had last year. And with heating, gas, the costs start basically December through April. That's when you get your big costs. The rest of those maintenance accounts are all fine. You notice HVAC maintenance, the $60,000, that's the first month, because we have the agreements with Siemens and Control Technologies, so that was one of the first payments for that. I believe we paid annually. Okay, then down in other services, things are okay. The first one, telephone voice, when you note, if you look at October, there was a big amount, $38,000. We should be getting a credit for some of that. There was the cost of the internet costs for all the schools, we get the E-rate credit, but Comcast wasn't giving us the credit, so we sort of held the bill for a couple months, and then they started screaming, and so we ended up paying it, and now we're going to get the credit. They've corrected it, so going forward, so for example, the month of November is correct, but we should be seeing the credit come. We didn't pay it until the end of November, so probably not going to see the credit until December or maybe January. Depends on the billing cycle. Other than that, mostly small items here. They seem to be fine. Transportation, going according to contract. Flipping over to page 3. If you take a look at the tuition out of district, you'll notice a very small number in November. We had the person that manages all those bills leave and a new person come in, so it's probably just, you know, the invoices. We'll probably see a very big December and or January to make up that difference. Supplies and materials, nothing really much there other than the normal scheme. Subscriptions is higher because curriculum is now using subscriptions as opposed to books, so it's higher than it has been historically, but it's in the budget this year. And page 4, the final page, you'll see under debt service, you'll see that payment of $454. That is the first annual payment on the long-term lease for all the energy savings equipment we put in at the new high school. So that's the payment, and then we're going to be getting savings. And if we don't get all the savings, then they're going to kind of guarantee it. So we did meet with them once. We're going to meet again with them in the next probably 6 weeks or so and try to match up because the project isn't completed. It'll be completed this month. The first payment was due in November. So we haven't had the full year of savings. So we're going to have to talk to them about how we're going to match this up going forward. From their point of view, it would be very simple if we did it on a calendar year. The clunky thing about a calendar year is, okay, so in year 1, I've got a payment, and am I going to get the full savings? Because if the full savings are going to spread over a calendar year, half of it's one fiscal year, half of it's the other fiscal year. So we got to work something out on that. Okay, other than that, that's about it. We're 33.8% spend. That's 5 out of 12 months, so makes sense. So that's the financial report.
Move to approve, move to accept the quarterly credit card report.
I think we did the credit card report. We're doing the financial.
Financial.
So-
Financial, I'm sorry. We didn't need a motion for the credit card though, right? Or did we?
I mean, if you want to accept and place on file, you did that, I think. So
Yeah, we
it's
did
fine
that,
to
we
do
did that, motion passed. And so now, motion to approve the financial report for November 2021.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. So we're down to the transfer reports.
Yes, final item. Transfer report, just 4 transfers this month that were over 1,000. First one is a special education transfer where they were sending one of their certified behavior to a professional development workshop, so they took the money from supplies and subscriptions to pay for the $1,000 for the workshop. The next one is special ed. This is, you've seen a couple of these the last few months. They can't find the person. We have the person in the budget. We can't find it. There's no one applying for the position. We need to provide the services, so we're using contracted services to do it. So when that happens, the first thing we do is we move the money out of the labor account into contracted services to cover it. The bad thing about this is typically contracted services are going to cost you more than just what the base salary is, which is the base salary was $55,000. That doesn't include benefits, so you'll save on the benefits line also. But so we've had to do that for probably about 5 positions.
Are those typically the behavior specialists? Is that what we're having the hardest time getting at this point?
That's one of them. Yeah, the specific positions in SPED, they're the more difficult positions to find. Then there's a Franklin Street preschool. Now keep in mind, this was the first year of the school, so it was just a budget that had maybe 2 or 3 line items, so now they're actually spending the money and we're just moving it from miscellaneous supplies to equipment. This was to purchase a binding machine, mailbox, paper rack, things like that to run the building. And the last one is the Nashua Technology Center at South. and all it is doing is moving it from 1,300, which is their general account, into the tech ed department, which is 1,370. So it's both, it's supplies, so it's just moving from one part of that budget to the same part of that budget. And that is it for transfers.
Move to approve the transfer report of the Nashua School District from November 2021.
Second?
And all in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Anything else to add this evening?
That's all I have.
All right. Miss. A second. And all in favor? Aye. Aye. And we are adjourned at 7:43. Thank you very much.